Pimax Crystal is really beautiful in terms of image quality. Hello, this is Nadeshiko Yamato. This time I would like to review Pimax Crystal, a very high-performance VR goggle. If you are interested in VR or like gadgets, please enjoy it until the end. Pimax may not be as well known as MetaQuest, but it actually has a history as long as Quest. It feels like high-end goggles that are only known to those in the know. I have also reviewed several Pimax products on the Japan channel in the past, for example Pimax 5K or Pimax 8KX. I also reviewed a perverted device called Pimax Portal, which is a portable game console that can be taken apart and transformed into VR goggles. Actually, I previously reviewed the Pimax Crystal that I will be introducing this time in another video. As for the features of Pimax Crystal, well, all VR goggles may look the same, but in reality each one has different features. For example, MetaQuest is specialized in versatility. Pimax Crystal, on the other hand, gives me the impression that it was all about pursuing image quality. The resolution is high, the display panel is probably of a good quality, and the lens is also made of glass. I think it's a pretty good lens. The surface of the lens is also smooth. After all, when it comes to VR, image quality is quite important, isn't it? For such people, Pimax may be quite good. Now, let's pay attention to the new parts of this Pimax Crystal. I'm also going to introduce the Lighthouse cover in this video. So, on top of that, there are actually 3 types of Pimax Crystal series. These are the Pimax Crystal Light, and Pimax Crystal Super that we will be introducing this time. There are these 3. There are actually 3 types. As for the basic specs, I think they're probably pretty much the same. The resolution is also the same. Basically, they have roughly the same performance, but Crystal Light is a reduced version of Crystal, and Crystal Super is a high-quality version of that. As for Light and Super, they were announced fairly recently, so I think they will be new products. There are 3 types, and you can attach a Lighthouse cover to any of them. When you attach the Lighthouse cover, Pimax Crystal becomes an outside-in tracking system. In the original state, it is called inside-out tracking, and tracking is performed from the camera on the front of the headset. But when you attach the Lighthouse cover, tracking is performed using a sensor like base station installed in the corner of the room. That's the way it works. Inside-out tracking and this base station tracking are 2 sides of the same coin, the good and the bad, but if you often use PCVR goggles, you might use the base station more often. So, when I reviewed the Pimax Crystal before, I think I said it, but the tracking accuracy wasn't very good. One of its selling points was the ability to track without the need for a base station using inside-out tracking like MetaQuest, but the tracking was a little weird, and the controller seemed to jiggle around a bit, so it wasn't a very good experience, it wasn't. Also, the controller itself is a bit small. I don't know how to say it. It feels like an inferior version of the Quest. It doesn't have a high-quality feel, and the tracking area is a bit disappointing. I think I gave you the impression that it was in the previous video. I feel like adding this new Lighthouse cover will improve that. What's more, the new Crystal Light and Crystal Super products can also be equipped with a Lighthouse cover, so once you see how the new Crystal Lighthouse cover works, the Crystal Light and Super will be like, ah, that's what it looks like. I think you can roughly understand that. So I'm like, let's get on with it, but please wait a moment. This time, it's a tie-up video with Pimax. So I was asked to introduce a few things. There are 8 of them. For example, Pimax Crystal has eye tracking function, high resolution. 3rd is the excellent color performance provided by QLED. And 4th is local dimming. High contrast. The 5th is that after-sales service has been localized to Japan, and the 6th is an offline experience event. The 7th item is FOV. The viewing angle is smaller than the past product Pimax 8K, but it is still large. And the 8th item is ultra-high resolution transparency. Something so shocking that once you use it, you won't forget it. This time, you asked me to introduce these things in a video. So, in this video, I would like to introduce this Lighthouse cover and also review whether these 8 charms of Pimax Crystal are true. Now let's unpack the Lighthouse cover. When you take it out of the black bag, there is a cover inside. When you pick it up, it's quite light, or rather, it's really light. At first glance, it doesn't seem like there's much of a difference from the original cover, but there's actually a little protrusion added to the left, right, and top sides of the surface. When you look at the back side, there is a metal part or terminal in the middle, which I think is probably a module for the Lighthouse. Now, in order to install this Lighthouse cover, you need to remove the original inside-out tracking cover, but this cover is extremely hard and I had to fight for about 5 minutes. I was in trouble because I couldn't get it at all. There are some kind of indentations on both sides of the bottom where you can hook your nails, and the instructions say to pull this out, but I can't get it out easily. In the end, I cut my nails short and used my nails to catch it and remove it. If you have long nails, please cut them. The nails will explode. Cut it short, please. I think I finally got it after about 5 minutes of fighting. I think it would be nice if the hardware around here could be improved a bit. Yes, when you remove the front cover, you can see the inside of Pimax Crystal. This is also my first time seeing it without a cover, but there are 4 cameras attached and the base is visible, so it looks a bit romantic. Even if you remove the cover, the tracking camera remains attached to the main body, so it seems like it can be used in conjunction with the lighthouse. It's hard to tell, but one of these is a lighthouse plate and the other is an inside-out tracking plate. Do you know which one is which? It would be amazing if I could figure it out. Well, okay, but if you look closely, you'll notice that there are depressions and protrusions on both sides of the front, and the side with the protrusions is the lighthouse side. If you turn it over, it's easy to understand. The lighthouse side has metal terminals or parts or something like a base. I think this could probably be sold as one piece without having to separate the parts, but I think that would probably increase the price. So I would separate the parts for those who don't have a lighthouse environment. I think it's like keeping the price as low as possible. It was very difficult to remove the cover, but it was extremely easy to install. However, since this terminal part in the center of the front is inserted into the Pimax Crystal body, it would be a good idea to check whether it is inserted properly here. However, if you plug it in normally, I think you can connect without any problems. Yes, it will look like this after connecting the plates. Well, I don't think it's changed much, but the protrusion has increased a bit and it looks cool. It kind of looks like Gundam. Every time I look at Pimax's products, I always think they look a little like Gundam. Yes, this completes the plate replacement. I would like to check the tracking accuracy of the lighthouse cover. I think shooting games are probably the easiest to understand. So I'm going to try them out, and they're easy to play without any problems. I don't have any particular problems with the tracking or its shifts, so I can play normally and just fine. Even if you have a lighthouse cover on, you can switch to inside-out tracking directly in the Pimax software, so there is no need to replace the cover. So it might be a good idea for base station users to have a lighthouse cover from the beginning. So next time, let's try the inside-out camera, well, the initial state, that is tracking without using a base station. Does it feel pretty good? I was surprisingly pessimistic about it, but I think it might be usable. Maybe not. You can see that when you hold this controller still, it gradually becomes distorted. Do you understand? I hope you understand. I feel like this is starting to shift. It's easier to understand if I put the controller on the desk. So right now I'm putting the controller on the desk and it's almost fixed, but I'll try adjusting it as I go. Even though it's supposed to be fixed on the desk, my hands keep twitching. It's barely moving right now, but you see it's really distorted. I can't even see the crosshair anymore. Would you like to make some corrections? It will look like this after editing. Yes, I put my hands on the desk. So, as I leave it there, it gradually starts to shift, which is a bit uncomfortable. I'm sure it'll work out if I keep my hand moving, but when I stop, it's twitching up and down a lot. It's not moving. Even though I'm not moving it, it twitches a lot. This is a little difficult to play. I think the lighthouse environment is better for Pimax Crystal. However, the controller is important when playing in the lighthouse environment. It's definitely easier to play the game if you have an index controller, so I think it's almost a necessity. I don't have an index controller, so I was trying my best with a Vibe controller, but it doesn't have any sticks or buttons, so it's really hard to play games. And compared to that, this inside-out tracking controller, it would still be easier to play. There are buttons and there's also a stick. It's still playable as a game, but I think the best option is the Lighthouse environment plus index controller. I think Pimax Crystal will only become complete if that happens, So I guess that's how it is. And in terms of image quality, it's really good. I've been playing Quest 3 a lot with a virtual desktop connected wirelessly, but there's no color smearing that is typical of wireless. Maybe when I look at things like this on Quest, it's quite blurry and I feel like I can see stripes. But as expected of Pimax Crystal, it's really beautiful. I'm currently testing out a VR FPS game called Contractor Showdown, and I've turned down the image quality settings quite a bit. I've lowered the SteamVR settings to about 50%, but it's still pretty clean and clear. In terms of image quality, Pimax Crystal is really beautiful. For example, this gun has iron sights. Do you understand? It's like aiming using the small holes in the front and back. But when using Quest 3 and a virtual desktop, it can be quite difficult to see. But when using Pimax Crystal, it's very clear. If you're playing a shooting game, I feel like it's easier to play with a VR headset that has better image quality. It's usually easy to aim at, so this is quite an advantage. As expected, the controller will shake a little when using inside-out tracking, so I think it's easiest to play with the Lighthouse and use an index controller. One thing to be concerned about is that you may feel distortion in the image. The Pimax lens isn't flat, it feels like it's a bit hilly or raised, so if you shift the headset even a little, your vision will be distorted. I don't know if this is the correct principle, but if the headset shifts even slightly, the screen becomes distorted, and I think this is the reason why I get a little sick. However, I don't think there will be any discomfort if it fits just right. I'm going to try Pimax Crystal's eye tracking with VR chat. By the way, his mouth doesn't move. The method of installing eye tracking itself was almost the same as installing Quest Pro. It's like installing software with a name like VRC face tracking and installing something like a Modi. For Pimax, there is a Modi for Pimax, so just install it. It's really easy. What do you think? How about the tracking accuracy itself? I'm not sure because I can't check the screen myself, but are you able to look to the right, look to the left, look down, look up, etc.? I'll check on it later, but it's probably able to blink. So, I close my right eye, then I close my left eye. You can also close it separately. I think the degree to which the eyes open or close varies considerably depending on the avatar's settings. So I don't think the eyes of an avatar that supports eye tracking will move in the first place. After all, when playing something like VR chat, it's better to have eyes that move, because the avatar looks more vivid. I usually use the Quest 3, but when doing things like VR chat, I often use the Quest Pro, which has eye tracking. I think eye tracking is important. Personally, if Pimax Crystal can do eye tracking, I would like to have face tracking as well. I vaguely remember, but if I remember correctly, face tracking is supported by a module sold separately. It's possible that I'm confusing it with the hand tracking module. So now I'm going to try Quest Pro eye tracking as a comparison. Look right, look left, look down, look up. What do you think? In case you're interested, I reviewed the Pimax Crystal recording from earlier, and I think my eyes were pretty much pulling a great deal. It felt kind of strange, but how about with Quest Pro? I personally think that maybe this one has better tracking accuracy, but I would like to see a little more refinement in the eye tracking of Pimax Crystal. By the way, a standalone mode has been added to Pimax Crystal. I think it probably wasn't implemented yet at the time of the previous review video. This time I saw it was implemented, I actually tried using it. When it comes to standalone mode, I think people are curious about how many apps can run standalone. When I actually looked at Pimax's App Store, it was a bit disastrous. I counted and found that there were only 12 apps. I can't find virtual desktop either. Even though it's a standalone mode, I feel like it doesn't really have much purpose if it doesn't have any content. Recently, however, we introduced the news that Meta's Horizon OS has been released to third parties in another video on Japan channel. Maybe Pimax will introduce Meta Horizon OS in the future, and you will be able to play the same apps as Quest. So I think you have a general understanding of Pimax Crystal. The image quality is good, and it feels like a high-end VR goggle with lots of features, but to be honest, I feel like the device has some subtle points that stand out. I feel like the standalone feature is holding me back a bit. There's almost no content in the store, you have to replace the battery, and it's unnecessarily heavy. It's very cumbersome because you have to insert 2 cables on both sides of your head. It's not very satisfying. What I'm trying to say is that I'm really looking forward to Pimax Crystal Lite. It maintains the same beautiful image quality as the Crystal, but eliminates the standalone function and eye tracking function, making it lightweight and extremely cheap. The Pimax Crystal we are introducing this time costs 258,999 yen in Japanese yen and $1,599 USD in dollars. It's quite expensive, isn't it? On the other hand, the cheapest model of Pimax Crystal Light starts at 112,999 yen or $799. For goggles of this performance, the price feels quite reasonable. But there's also a special model, the Pimax Crystal Light with local dimming and a lighthouse faceplate for 143,999 yen, $899. After all, it's definitely better to have a lighthouse plate. Even with the Crystal Light, if the controller doesn't improve, you can't expect much tracking accuracy, so I think it's best to attach this lighthouse plate from the beginning and assume that it will be operated in a lighthouse environment from the beginning. When you think about it that way, Pimax Crystal Light feels like a complete set of goggles that prioritize high image quality. I'm also personally interested in Crystal Light, so if I get a chance, I'd like to review it and let everyone know what it's like. I would like to upload it to this English channel as well. Please subscribe to the channel, give it a high rating, and look forward to it. We will continue to share information about VR and gadgets, so we hope to see you again via video streaming. Bye bye.